We are facing the 6th mass extinction of life on Earth. The #1 driver of that is habitat loss. What that means is animals are losing wild spaces. Our project is really about restoring hope for wildlife, but also for people. To reverse the extinction crisis, to undo the damage we've done, we need to protect more habitat for wildlife and restore that habitat and connect that habitat through wildlife corridors.
These 3 words, protect, restore, rewild, are really important to us. Locating areas of land that are crucially important for the biodiversity of the region. And what we do is we strategically find these areas that are many times under threat from industrial agriculture. Once we've found one and once we've decided as an organization, we will attempt to purchase it as Wild Tomorrow South Africa, the charity. And this is what we've done with 2 pieces, this piece Ukawela and then the second piece Umfaleni.
One of the roles with Wild Tomorrow Fund is to try and look at how we can take existing conservation areas and link them together, because the biological processes have been broken by building these spots in conservation. And what we have to try and do is link the spots, link the dots, join the dots and try and get conservation working. So Wild Tomorrow Fund's objective is to buy land that's currently not under conservation, convert it to conservation so that we can recreate those biological linkages between different parks.
Standing here is super amazing. This is the Greater Ukawela Nature Reserve, and so excited because this old fence is going down. The very big mammals like the elephants and the rhinos and lions will be able to move through here and into this new habitat. Our reserve is 30% wetland, which is super important. It's one of the most threatened ecosystems in the world, and it's full of water, which is life-saving for wildlife, especially with coming, unfortunately, climate change. So, this is really the heart of our mission, is expanding, protecting wild spaces, creating a corridor to allow wildlife to move again across the regional landscape.
It's so important to protect everything that we have. People are always interested in protecting tigers or lions or rhinos or pandas or whatever it is, but people forget about the smaller things. Everything is interlinked in nature, and without the smaller things, without the insects, without the fish, the amphibians, none of it works. Of course, it's something we have to do. We do have to protect the big and hairies and the iconic species, but in my opinion, it's more important to protect the smaller things, to protect habitat, to protect everything together. Protecting one species isn't going to solve any of our problems. So if we look here, we've got a little ant highway. Here's their burrow. You can see they're heading off in that direction into the grass, probably foraging, looking for food coming out. You see all these little dragonflies. These little guys are spotted groundlings. And this is just so important for conservation. It's not about the elephants and the rhinos and the lions all the time. These little guys that you see on the ground, flying around, crawling around, are incredibly important. If these things disappear, it's going to cause ecosystem collapse. If you have the big species, big mammal species, not necessarily so, but these guys certainly. This wetland is so important for all sorts of other animals. The bird life that we have here is incredible. Pelicans, flamingos, terns, egrets. You can hear the bee-eaters calling in the background.
I actually believe this is one of the few nesting sites for pelicans.
Correct.
Endangered pelican species.
Yeah, correct.
One of 2, yeah.
And there are a lot of areas in the country, freshwater wetlands are under severe threat in the country, and this is still almost completely pristine. So it's hugely important for breeding of birds, waders, water birds, And of course, fish, frogs, reptiles, insects, the whole lot.
Crocodiles.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And it's beautiful.
Yeah, and that's always a bonus.
I think the most important aspect of the current focus on biodiversity, if you exclude climate change and all the other things that are being debated internationally, there's absolutely irrefutable evidence now that our own futures are directly linked to biodiversity. Loss of biodiversity may directly impact on humans' future more than anything else. If you look at all the current research that's happening in medicine, 80% of the research is on natural products, sourced from biodiversity resources. So our futures are directly linked to biodiversity. The healthier the system, there's absolutely no doubt, the healthier our future is going to be and the more sustainable our future is going to be. Because the cure for cancer may or may not be sitting out there in biodiversity, which has not been discovered. Some species we know we've lost before we've seen them. And that's the danger to our futures, is that we may have something that's going to revolutionize our ability to sustain ourselves on the finite planet, which is Earth. So we have to find a way of making ourselves work on this planet. And icon species like rhino are indicators of how we're treating the rest of the system. And the more of those that we lose, the more hardened we're going to be to losing these systems, and the less we're going to care. And as soon as we stop caring, our future is in jeopardy completely.
A few years ago, we put together a team of 14 women from the local community that we call the Green Mambas. So they come on the reserve and do green and sustainable jobs. And you're going to be taking them on a rhino dehorning, which is huge. I wouldn't be surprised if the majority of them have never even seen a rhino, which is crazy. It's in their backyard, but they don't get the opportunity to see big five, elephants, rhino, lion, like we do, let alone be a part of a wildlife intervention.
The reason why you guys are here today is that we're dehorning our rhino, and with the support from our Tomorrow Fund, we are able to continue doing this important work. Rhino dehorning has become a very good tool for us to at least reduce the poaching risks to a rhino population in the park. We've got a ground crew here, a helicopter and a veterinarian. We've got monitors out trying to find an individual with significant regrowth. Because the horns grow a couple of inches every year, we have to stay on top of the rhino dehorning. It's not just a once-off process where you can dehorn your population and leave them. So this has become an ongoing program, and it's something that we do weekly, basically. They'll dart the rhino from the air. Once the rhino's gone down, the ground crew will move in. We will put earplugs in, we'll put a blindfold on. And then once it's safe for the Wild Tomorrow Fund crew to get off the vehicles, they will join us while we do the work on the rhino.
My job obviously is with the responsibility of getting the rhino down safely, dehorning and getting it back up on its feet again, as well as collecting the DNA samples that we need to on the way.
We will cut the horn as low as we can. We leave space so that we don't damage the growth plate of the horn, and then we'll wake up the rhino. We take measurements for our record keeping and research. We also collect tissue samples, blood, hair, horn, etc. That gets sent to the National Laboratory in Pretoria, where they run a DNA profile on the rhino that have been immobilized in the country, and they get that from various parks. The reason why that's a critical part of what we do today is because should they confiscate a horn at our Tambo, one of our ports of entry, they are able to link that to a crime scene, whereas before they can't.
Over the years, we've progressed from physical capture in the 1960s, where we used to catch rhinos with a long pole rope and literally rope them down. Caused a great deal of trauma to those rhinos, and we lost around about 50% of them due to that trauma and to a problem that we now know as capture myopathy. Capture myopathy is basically a massive breakdown of muscles, and as a result of the major stress that they went through with physical capture. What it did is it galvanized us into looking for drugs and drug systems that would work better. Eventually we hit upon a group of drugs that you guys will know as the narcotics or the opioids. And the one I use today is a narcotic or an opioid with the code name of M99. Very briefly, the dehorning process. I use a chainsaw. It is quick, it's efficient, and it's cool in its working. It doesn't generate a lot of heat. I find it the most efficient way to work, and I've done over 3,000 of them. For most people, it's a pretty traumatic thing to look at. It isn't an easy thing to do. It's an emotionally difficult thing to watch when you've not seen it before. We're doing no harm to the rhino. There's no pain associated with it. There's no nerve endings in the area that we're cutting. Having observed over the last 5-6 years, we've seen minimal side effects.
So let's put them back up. That should be good. Yeah, that should be fine. It's better than I'm sitting underneath them like that. Okay, so it's 10, just to be sure. Bottom of the right here. Okay. Kanila kanje? Cheka lapha. Tinta ngapha. Awukonkinga. Yeah, well, I don't know. We need to sort this out.
Radio, thank you. Can ask you for yellow ones we can use because he told me that he...
Okay, you guys radio him and talk to him. Okay, and then dokotela dus of a chip, mark a chip. So this is not to track the animal. It's not. I find a ibande yabon. Yole chip kupela iskati maybe kusino so fagem bobo lapi in lebeni. Okay. Each and lep uso bon mase ngene lapi in kumazi. Ufage in bobo mase each in bobo uso bekoni nombolo. So you put udoktilu fagi chapi, ichap usizile, masi maybe so tulile la pitlati so file. Give me the scanner so I can show them. Tina tata logo, and then so ngena kona, and then uyazi nombolo ganje. Then tiniyazo bani, yabon. So yole it's a backup. And lebe imbobo zo kala, and then secondary ufagi chip. Okay, that should be good. Happy? Happy. Yeah.
I'll find it.
Stony. Don, are you going to stay with this animal for a bit? I'm going to quickly just take them across and then I'll run back. Okay, let's go, guys. She's bigger. Come, guys, let's go. So we normally just Utoni uzobekona isikhathi enabulala eziningi ukombe angithi manje siphansi impela because uzosiza impela ikhiphe ibhondo angithi badelile ukuthi khona kusize kakhulu aha impela uzofela
We were waiting just until Karen is with the calf because we like to wake them up together, and then the calf hopefully will smell her and come up this way. It's also one of the reasons why we want to move out. Our scent will disturb that calf, and it won't. They'll get together. Even if we disturb them, it'll take an hour. But if you don't disturb them, it'll happen quickly.
Let me in.
Go for it.
Okay, copy, you can go.
Okay, copy. Thank you.
Okay, we're done, yeah.
Best time, everything was the best time, but I really enjoy it.
At the end of the day, for us, we were losing the fight when it came to rhino poaching. It doesn't solve the rhino poaching crisis by any means, but what it does do is it buys us time and it allows populations that are being dehorned to grow.
Rhinos are what is in serious decline. If nothing changes, the rhinos will go extinct in less than 10 years. And for me, I have always said I do not want my children or grandchildren to see rhinos in a textbook. But at this rate, my children will be seeing rhinos in a textbook, let alone my grandchildren won't. It will be like a dinosaur to them.
Our Green Mambas are our all-woman team that do all our alien clearing and bush clearing. And what that involves is being collected in the community and then brought back to the reserve, where they then will help in designated areas to clear invasive plant species. And these species outcompete native plants simply because they have no natural predators or no natural enemies. They're an integral part of our habitat restoration process, and so that's cutting it out, putting herbicide down, and then also with our bush clearing. Bush clearing is a different strategy that's removing undesirable trees and plants which may be indigenous but have recolonize these areas in a higher density than what you'd find in natural habitat. And so it's really important that we get this taken care of and removed just to restore the habitat to the way it would have been.
You know, they're out here every day. It's a tough job, whacking alien plants and pulling them out. They're, you know, in the forest every single day, at the reserve every single day, seeing a cheetah for the first time, getting scared by a leopard in the bushes for the first time. You know, maybe those experiences aren't fun for the green mambas the first time, but it's really connecting them and exposing them to conservation, learning about conservation, nature. Kevin, our reserve manager, has taught them, you know, native tree seeds and how to collect those and how to grow them.
While there are 15 green mambas, there are actually over 90 people that are benefiting from their employment.
It's a really beautiful, I think, story of reconnection, not just for wildlife to traverse the corridor, but for people to want to protect, restore and rewild.
Green mamba, como Lina.
Part of my job is to also burn the natural vegetation, and that's for a number of different reasons. So one of it's to sort of re-stimulate the grasses to grow. Your grasses support all your grazing animals, and in the lack of grazing animals and also in the lack of fire, a lot of the more desirable species can start dying out. And once they start dying out, the grasses become what they call moribund. They become old and dry. They start shading out neighboring grasses, and eventually the grass composition gets reduced and you get a lot more bushes and shrubs and things that you can see behind me. You need to start burning again. That'll slowly remove a lot of the smaller bushes and scrub and things, re-stimulate the grasses, and that creates more food for the grazers at the end of the day. And so that's a lot of the processes involved with, the rehabilitation of the sort of wild areas, or what we think are wild areas, but they have been formerly mismanaged either through farming or just lack of fire or burning. And so, we have to sort of get them back into the right ecological function, as it were.
It's their presence more than anything. They're constantly walking around the reserves. The community do not want to be involved in a to-do with our guys. They know that they're serious and they can get into trouble if they're caught by our guys. Like anywhere in the world, there are good people and bad people. There are some people that live in the community that choose to poach from other reserves, and they want to catch animals for meat, and whether they consume the meat or whether they sell the meat. So they'll try and get into our reserve, and they'll do that by cutting the fence. They'll get under and they'll set these snares. They're wire snares, they're loops, and they'll put them in trails where they can see that the animals are walking. So if an animal's head goes in, it's like a noose and it tightens. They'll bring dogs over and they'll scare the animals, and then that'll just speed up the process. So they may be on site, they may be in our reserve when the animal is caught, but most often they'll put the snare up and they'll just leave, and then they'll come back and see if they've caught anything. What is a snare and how do they catch them?
It's a wire. They set it as a round shape, like this one, but it's a wire.
Yeah.
Then they make it a round shape like this one. Then this one they tie it on a tree. Then sometimes they use the branches to cover up the space. Then they're only left with this space, so that the animal, if they can come, they can go like this one. Then they can catch themselves on that thing. So they usually it's different sizes. Sometimes they use this electricity wire that we use on a wire. Sometimes they cut the wire here, electricity. So it's depending on which species they need.
Yeah.
So like here, usually they use this one, electricity wire, because they're hunting the nyala.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's only have a nyala.
And then they come back and see if they've caught anything?
The snares that we found here, they didn't come back because they saw that now the rangers are alert and checking, so they didn't come back again. But sometimes they use it at night. Sometimes they come with the dogs, then they're setting the snares. Then by the time they're chasing with the dog, the nyala or other species, they come through to the snares, then they caught it. Same time, then they remove the snares. If we saw the new snares, like sometimes we don't remove it, we just strip down. Then we're trying to do LP ambush, so that if they can come again, maybe we can catch that person. But we tried all the time to do ambush while they using to set it, while they setting, but we don't. The guys, they didn't come back. So here was the old carcass that we found here. Yeah, it's a nyala that they caught this one. If they find the old carcass like this one, you just put this one on the top so that you can see. Just it's a mark to the rangers that if they're gonna find this one here, like at the top, like this one, you will see that. Let's say maybe I was at home on and off. Then if I see like a mark like this one, I see that the rangers already saw that there is a nyala or something dead before. Yeah. Then if you find here, you just put it on a GPS that we found the dead animals here. Then you put it in nyala, it's a male, sub-adult, or it's an adult, then you write down here. Thereafter we found that this one on a tree, like you see. It's a mark that something's wrong here. Then we're trying from there, maybe around here, to check that maybe the nyala or other the species that they was on a snare is still alive or not.
It's a horrible death for the animal. They don't die from the wire being caught. They die from struggling hour over hour, just constantly trying to get out. And that tightens the noose just a bit each time. And what is even more of a waste, often they never come back. So we find animals that have been caught, and for some reason or another, the poachers just didn't return.
We're taking as the grass and the soil as a map, because all that they're reading here, you have to read, like if you see the grass is laying down this side, have to see that what is going on there. Maybe someone's walking here. Then you have to try to check from there. We don't tell our mind that we are only 2 people who's patrolling. We are 3, because the poach also, it's a person. Some, they're taking the shots, then they make like they're going back, like, but they're going inside. They use it so that if you come, the rangers, they can come. They say, these people is going inside. So you have to track very well. That's why these people, if they're going, but this one is moving back. The soil is moving back. Why? Then you have to be open-minded and check. That's all our tactics. Some of them, they're using the branch. They cut the branch, they going on the top, then they walk like this one. Some of them, they put a sponge down so that you didn't find anything, any tracks. So That's why you have to work hard as a ranger. You have to check very, very, very well.
We do a Ranger Day campaign every year, World Ranger Day, and one of the items that we've asked our donors to help support are these tents.
That's where we are living here. It's our camp. Now at our camp we live a lifestyle now. Yeah, it's a new lifestyle, not the same as before. Here, at least we have a fridge here, and we have a meat that we found here. This is our food, all of us, so we have to share.
Nice. You made it?
Yeah, I make this one. Last time Kevin, they took the bag of snares. I think it's 1,000, and I'm not mistaken, but I wrote it down that side. I think it's the hippo, this one, because they were setting, yeah, the hippo, yeah, I was setting this one for the hippos, as we see here, joining as two.
You know, it's sad because there are a lot of hungry people the other side of our fence, and they're not doing it because they're trophy hunters. They're not doing it to put the head on a wall and say, look how amazing I did, I just shot this animal. They're doing it for food, but there has to be rules. They can't do it in areas that don't belong to them.
Unfortunately, with the rhino poaching in the country at the moment, the guys that come in are armed. You know, they need weapons to shoot these animals, and a lot of these guys that do come in and do the poaching are ex-military. A lot of them from Mozambique, involved in the civil war in the past. So these guys are armed quite often with heavy caliber rifles, AK-47s, and they're not scared to use them. You know, so you know, if you expect your team to go out and look after these animals and they've got to put up against those type of armed poachers, they have to be able to defend themselves.
Shushlu-Mfolozi is the oldest reserve in Africa. We have one of the most important rhino populations in the world. In saying that, the population is significantly under threat from poaching, and it's for this reason that we had to establish the Canine Unit. The Canine Unit is not a nice to have, it's a must have.
We are very proud of the role that we're playing within the Shushlu-Mfolozi Park. We form a crucial part of the law enforcement teams in HIP, and we are working 24 hours tirelessly. The suspect, they had the tracks, and even if they don't have the tracks, like the dogs can follow them faster than we do with our naked eyes. And it means we have better chance of intercepting them with the dogs. Our unit consists of handlers as well as other reaction unit members who assist us on tracks and protect us, as we need to pay attention to our dogs and cannot defend ourselves if need be from the armed suspect. And then the poachers are constantly changing tactics, and so just do it through training and taking note of how the suspects behave when we follow them.
If you lay the tracks into the wind, the scent is blowing over a wider area like a cone. So the dog will start the track by trying to air scent, which you don't really want. So if you lay the track with the wind, she's forced to put her nose down to track with her nose, as opposed to air scenting.
Usually there are certain indications. You can see that now the dog is acting different. So there might be poachers ahead, or maybe there's an elephant ahead. So you just have to read your dog. You know your dog very well. And then sometimes if you're tracking on leash, you track, and then the moment she's starting to move back and forth, you realize that the tracks are now getting fresher. And the moment she doesn't want to go any further, the poachers are around there. So you just have to know your dog very well, because with the other two, They follow the tracks very fast, but the time you follow the different scent, they can tell them, no, that's not friendly. So you just have to watch out. Even the dogs can feel you. They can feel how you feel. So the moment you put pressure on yourself, also the same thing happens to the dog.
We rely on the dogs a lot, but it's also up to the handler, and that's why we have to do a lot of intensive training. Our trainer actually suggested that one should do around about 100 training sessions to be successful on a live operation. And that's why we have to intensively train every day to make sure that our dogs are up to standard, our handlers understand and can read our dog behavior. And that's why they have to develop these special bonds, because they will be able to read the dog better based on all our training, based on previous experiences on how the dogs react, because there's no simple procedure. You can just follow a dog and it might just be off track, but it's up to the handler to know this dog is off track. We're not on tracks anymore, and what am I going to do to get back on tracks? If you're walking through the bush, your body is emitting a scent, it's getting stuck to the grass, but if you walk in circles, if you do backtracking, if you cross rivers, that scent is dispersing with the wind, with the sun, and so yeah, we have to train all those scenarios. So it is the dogs, but it's also the handlers. That's why these guys need to be so fit. They need to get there, like following that GPS with the dogs, because they have the collars, and get there on time before anything bad happens to the dogs. These dogs, all the equipment, all the food, all the beds, all the cleaning equipment, even the vehicle maintenance, even building this roof here for the dogs is all donor money. But you see, like also what's nice about this canine unit is the dogs are like our family. They don't stay in these cages all day. They walk around with us, and then when it's work time, it's work time. So I like that too.
They've been around at like roughly 84 million years. It's a very long time. And basically anything that was close to them has died out. So they're sort of off in their own branch. So after mammals, you split into the order Phyllodota. The 8 pangolin species you find in the world are the only species in that order. So never mind nothing else in their family, there's nothing else in their order. She is the 15th pangolin we've had from African Pangolin Working Group here at Mignoni. Like the other 14 previous pangolins we've had in, they've all previously been poached. They've been recovered in sting operations from the black market trade, treated at Johannesburg Wildlife Veterinary Hospital, and then we're one of the soft release sites they send them to here in KwaZulu-Natal. There's also other soft release sites throughout the country. So the goal here on Mignoni is to establish a breeding population of pangolins. Pangolins were wiped out in the province. It's very hard to know exactly when they were wiped out. For the adult pangolins, you don't need to teach them how to feed, you don't need to teach them how to find burrows or what to do around predators, they know what they're doing. These young pangolins, it really depends on their size, how much time they spent with their mother. Sometimes they spent a lot of time with their mother, other times they're really quite inexperienced. So some of the younger pangolins we get in, you'll literally be starting out and finding like 90% of their food for them. And it's teaching them how to find food. So it's lifting rocks, taking them to termite mounds, scratching at the termite mounds so they copy you and things like that. So you might actually have to teach them how to find food types. Sometimes they kind of need work on finding burrows. They're not too used to it. So you need to like repeatedly take them to burrows and get them used to it. Some of the other species, so like white and black-bellied pangolins, which live a bit further north in Africa, they're like 3-4 kilograms, but they're arboreal, they climb up trees, and they're a little bit more diurnal, so they're a bit more active during the day. They can be a bit more targeted by poachers. So it does depend on the species as well. Temix is definitely one of the trickier ones to sort of find, which is partly why they're doing the best out of all the 8 pangolin species in the world. So you get 4 in Asia, 4 in Africa, the Chinese pangolins doing the worst. They are closer to the cultural and medicinal market that the scales get sold to, and they're estimated to go extinct in about the next 10 years. Pangolins, Temminck's pangolin, they just eat ants and termites. They'll feed off 4 different genuses of termites and 15 different genuses of ants, so not all ants and termites, they're quite selective. And these eggs are just awesome. So they have lots of sticky saliva. Now the whole length actually starts by a pelvis. So if she wants to, she can stick that all the way out, and just big saliva glands on the chest which constantly coat that tongue as it goes out, and everything just sticks to the tongue. The goal was to set up a breeding population, and they are breeding. We've still got a lot to learn. We don't know how much space pups need to disperse from their mothers and things like that. So there's still a lot we don't really know, especially on the pup side. Temminck's here is currently classified as vulnerable, so they are a threatened species. So it's the same conservation status as white rhinos are at the moment. Temminck's pangolin is so very rare to see, it's hard to know when they'll actually go extinct in an area or what their populations are doing like. Most reserves don't really monitor how many pangolins they got. So no one really has great population estimates and things like that. So they're one of those species that can kind of disappear without you realizing.
It's always difficult with a mission like Wild Tomorrow, which technically I suppose could be applied to anything globally. The trick is focusing, and I think there's this slightly dangerous divide between much of what exists today with regards to conservation and what I might call the real world, and finding a way to bring those two together is kind of at the heart of what we do. My key role is based around fundraising primarily, but I also find myself in the real estate business, and so therefore we, funnily enough, even though here we are saving land and habitat, it invariably requires some kind of skill set in the real estate world, whether it's the negotiation of buying the land itself or it's the dwellings that we find on the land, and of course the impact work that we do within the communities and the construction related pieces of that.
From my very first working job, I started catching and translocating wildlife to create new wildlife areas and to repopulate areas that had had local extinctions of wildlife. Phinda was the first Big Five development in northern KwaZulu-Natal, and in order to achieve a Big Five development, we needed to bring in animals that didn't exist on the land before, and therefore the legislation to manage those animals on private land didn't exist. So in cooperation with the conservation authorities at the time, we had to change the local legislation to be able to accommodate the development of a reserve with animals that were currently not on private land in the province. So it was really quite something. I've been privileged to be able to go and share this knowledge that we've developed and our passion for making wildlife fulfill a much bigger role than just there for people to view and enjoy. It has an implication at social level which is much bigger than just its value as something that people want to go and see. It actually brings us back to our roots. It actually grounds us. Conservation and wildlife is a motivator way beyond what any other form of activity can do. From healing social and psychological ills to getting people to talk to each other and getting people to work together for a joint outcome. Similarly, it's been completely divisive in modern society, and social media has meant that people have taken conservation mantras, put them in one-liners, and tried to drive them to their own success without understanding the complications of a single one line in conservation. The impact of the well-intentioned but ill-informed international public opinion as having negative effects on conservation in many parts of the world, the developing world particularly. And the difference here is that the developed world have access to all the social media and therefore have a very big voice. And the developing world don't have access to social media and therefore are never heard in the arguments, although the results of the debates are forced on them because people are making decisions about what happens in another continent when they're sitting on a separate continent, and they don't live with the consequences of that decision. So the biggest single threat to conservation in the world today is the uninformed social media opinion. And we have to try and get that right, because these people are very well intentioned. People who have emotions about wildlife are trying to do the right thing. And we have to try and help them to make sure that what they're saying and what they're doing is going to do the right thing. Because unfortunately, in many cases today, it's not achieving what they set out to do when they initially started it.
Welcome home.
Rewilding can mean many things. It can mean bringing back wildlife like we're doing, so reintroducing giraffe, zebra, wildebeest in this place that hadn't seen them for over probably at least 100 years. We're rewilding by reintroducing native species. We're also rewilding by restoring the habitat, but also equally importantly, and what I love the most, is rewilding our own hearts and other people's hearts. So rewilding is also about reconnecting people to nature, reconnecting our hearts to nature. Our last reintroduction was the kudu. This beautiful, big, the tallest of the antelope species, I believe, that was missing with these big ears. And what I think is really beautiful about that story is they were donated by our neighbour, who's a pineapple farmer. So he has part of his land where he has wildlife. He loves wildlife and conservation. And, you know, it's a really meaningful partnership, I think, to have our neighbour donating animals to us to help us rewild.
I've already made my pre-mixed darts, so that's all up and ready to run. It's got a transmitter in. The transmitter is to track the animals so that I can't lose them. Hopefully that I can't lose them. There's the transmitter inside. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pressurize my dart. That stops the muti from coming out. So on impact, that will go across and hook onto the animal, and it runs with the dart, and that's my transmitter. So now I'm going to pump it so that it picks up a charge. It looks good. The bubble's a lot smaller. Ready to go. Now I want to just check my transmitter that it's working. It's working. And that's my dart gun. Okay, darts in. Oh, that's not a good sign. But let's give it some time. Let's just give it some time at all. As long as we can hear it beeping, that's the main thing. Just antibiotic And that is just a calming halaberado that I'm giving it, and then wake up.
Climb up and have a look. Where have you been up?
Big ears. Is that all the ticks?
Yeah, there's a lot of ticks. Hey, I'm going to go put them here. So this morning we're going to do some bird ringing or bird banding, and that involves setting up a series of mist nets through the bush that will catch birds that are moving through. The nets are very, very fine, that's why they call them mist nets, so the birds don't really see them. They fly in, they hang in the nets, it doesn't hurt them in any way, it's the safest way of catching the birds. Then what we'll do is we'll take the birds out, we'll place them in a bag, which keeps them calm. And then we'll put a small numbered ring on each bird, and that's basically a form of sort of marking and recapturing the birds, so that we know whether that bird's moved somewhere else or if it stays in one place. It's great to do this on a sort of continuous effort basis, so once a month or what have you, then you can get an idea of what your bird populations are in an area, what birds are moving through, which birds are resident, and it's a great monitoring tool. Oh, this is like one of the best. So this is what we call a pink-throated twin spot, part of the finch family. This is one of the sort of special birds in this area that a lot of people come to look for. These birds are really hard to see because they'll sit on the ground and then fly off, and then you just see this little pink flash go by, and you don't actually get a chance to actually see the bird itself. Basic measurements is wing, tail, head, total head, bill, tarsus, which is this sort of arm bone here.
Wow.
Then we'll look at the molt, which is on the wing. see if it's got new feathers or old feathers. Most of these will already be new feathers because I do basically 2 molts in a season, so a breeding molt and a summer molt and a winter molt basically.
Oh, beauty.
Red-capped robin chat. This is a little warbler. It's changed its name now to green-backed Cameroptera. Yeah, and it's also got a ring on it, so it's also one of my previous captures.
Yeah.
Yep. I started growing orchids when I was 7, so I was one of the youngest orchid growers in the country at one stage. But my passion is more the local species that we find, in the province. They're special to me. All orchids are special, but these are really special because they're kind of our orchids. It's our heritage, and we should be looking after them. Busy writing a book on the orchids of the province and illustrating it with life-size watercolors. And I think these watercolors capture something that photographs can't. And because it's for the province that I'm in, it just brings it a lot more to home at the end of the day. I've done almost all the orchids. It's nearly 300 species that I've illustrated. You can see I include all the details of each flower, so from the front and the side. And then color variation that you might pick up in the field. So this is an illustration of an orchid that I found in 1997, and a friend of mine found it in the same week in a different province. We called each other and he said, "Hey, I found this orchid," and I said to my son, "I found this orchid," and we described it to each other and we found out it's the same thing that we've seen. It turned out to be a new species, and we eventually described it in 2010, and it's called Stenoglottis modestus. But at least it's got my name and my friend's name next to it. Everything kind of pushes me to sort of looking for orchids wherever I go. So the first thing I do is kind of make a list of what should be in the area orchid-wise, and then hopefully fill up that list by finding them. And that's what's happened here as well. I found almost all the species I thought would be here. And then it's also great to try and restore the plants that should have been here that have been removed due to farming practices in the past. So if we find an area where a tree has fallen down with orchids on and we know they're going to die, I'll try and rescue them and plant them back into the reserve where they'll be protected. So yeah, everything's kind of driven in a part by sort of the passion for the plants and the flowers.
I couldn't see myself doing anything else. This is my office. Who would not want an office like this? It is absolutely a calling. Teachers and police officers and firemen have callings as well to do that kind of work, and this absolutely is a calling as well.
Working for Wild Tomorrow and being part of the conservation work that they're doing is extremely gratifying for me. I can't picture a 9-to-5 job in a desk in New York City. I'm happiest here in the bush, and I still am on my computer a lot, but I look up and I see giraffe and zebra and wildebeest, and I'm reminded that we're doing the good fight.
Our hope is for people to remember that we are part of nature, and we must care for nature.
I'd love for people to take more notice about the nature that is already around them in the city, and to respect and want to protect biodiversity that's in their backyards too. And you can do it by planting native in your backyard, on your balcony, on your rooftop in New York. It'll help the pollinators, and you'll start to see and notice the amazing biodiversity that surrounds you even in more urban areas. So yeah, you can protect, restore, rewild even in your backyard.
We do believe that the rhinos will be okay. We do believe the elephants will be okay. But where do they go in 50 years' time? Where do they go in 100 years' time if we're not protecting habitat?
Thank you.